Welcome to the Moodboard. My name is Aaron,
And this is Cesar.
and we're two creatives having meaningful conversations that empower creative people all over the world. And this is episode 7. And the main topic that we're going to cover in this new episode is we just graduated. Now what? Cesar, why don't you kick us off with maybe your thought process after your graduation? What were you thinking? What was going through your mind? And yeah, just give us a little bit of your state of mind during that time.
Sure. I would love to kick us off with this topic because Aaron and I were previously chatting about this such a pivoting and such important period in your life and your career because you just went from preparing yourself as a professional, maturing as a person, and now you're going to become a valuable member to society and contributing to society. And even though we might not feel like it, I think it's important for us to talk about this topic of that is so relevant right now, class of 2024. And I wanted to talk about what I went through during my time, which I think is very similar, and we all go through the same scenario where we graduated and we have been in this incubated environment for 4+ years, and now we are on our own. And for me, the key to having a successful transition from college to your professional world, your new chapter in your career, your first chapter in your career, which I think you could or you should start during college with internships. So for me, a successful transition into work, it starts in college, where you do projects that are catered towards your interests and expertise, because those projects are going to go in your portfolio. And that's where you're going to be showing to companies, to land a job. And it's very important, so from college, to start preparing yourself, to start organizing everything, so that when you're done with college, you're ready you have all the tools in place to start writing your new chapter in your career. So for me, it was very helpful to have internships under my belt prior to finishing college, so that I had some real professional experience to show my resume. I was, grateful, and I think I made the right choices by pursuing 4 internships before finishing college. So that was very helpful. However, not a lot of people have the opportunity for some reason or another, or especially now where things might be a little bit more challenging. So we also want to focus on, I don't think it's like a worst case scenario, but it's not a scenario where you might not want to be in, or you didn't have the choice to be in, but you are. So we want to walk you through ways of how can we tackle or handle a situation where, let's say, you didn't have an internship in college, and now you finished college, you graduated, which that itself is an accomplishment, and now we have to work with what we have to now land an internship. So I think that's something very important, for recent grads that didn't have the chance, for some reason or another, to have an internship. And I think we can start thinking about ways to, okay, you didn't have an internship during college. Okay, now you have to get one internship after college.
Yeah.
Or you could go for an entry level position. And both 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 are possible. It's just that it's gonna take you a little bit of creativity and a little bit of more work on the portfolio end. Because I think you might have to craft projects that are catered towards the industry or the type of projects and jobs you want to be doing. And that's what I went through, in my experience
Yeah.
when I finished graduate school. The only experience, actually, when I finished grad school, I didn't have, let's say, an internship or professional experience. However, I did work as a sample room technician in the school.
Mm.
So that's something that was very key for me, experience wise, to have, because I could show management skills.
Right.
I could show also, to be a sample room technician, you have to be very good at doing what you do, because you sometimes were educating people or helping people troubleshoot through projects, which is something that we did that was very good for me to learn and to grow, because that's something that you're gonna run into later in your career.
So it's like taking any
Mhm.
opportunity that you have in your environment to just get any kind of work experience that might be directly or indirectly related to what you're attempting to do.
Yes. And then after I finished graduate school for accessory design, which it's where we were taught footwear and bag making. Then I did an apprenticeship for 6 months, which was also helpful for me to further my experience and education side of the education side of my professional preparation. And I think that's something that we can also touch on, internships and apprenticeships. Because
What's the difference? Yeah.
Apprenticeship, it's where you shadow someone for X amount of time, for like the time that that is that you guys agree on, to with the person that you're learning from. So in this case, I learned from my professor Marcel Marchand. I learned from him, and we said, like, okay, I would like to do an apprenticeship for 6 months. And in those 6 months, in the apprenticeship, you shadow the person you're learning from. And you do what they do, and it's a lot of practice. It's like it's more education. Unlike in the internship, that you are more of like assisting a lot, but you're not necessarily learning. You're like applying what you learn in school, but you're doing like small tasks. Like you're good enough to do those things, but you're not at the level of like, hey, we're gonna hand you a project for you to handle.
Yeah.
So
It's a lot.
you're assisting. Yeah, you're assisting the assistant.
Yeah.
But in the apprenticeship, you assist the master. You assist the master, and you learn. And I think if you can do apprenticeship, I think I would, now that I know what it is and how instrumental it was for me to do that, to then later on land my first job.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend an apprenticeship.
Same.
Because apprenticeship is actually a very there are 3 ways I was reading somewhere that an apprenticeship is a very Eastern like way of learning, where
Mm,
you learn from the master,
yes,
and then there are like three ways of learning, and I forgot where I read that. And one of
that's
them
really interesting.
is the apprenticeship, where you do what the master does, and you do it for so long, but you cannot try anything new. You have to learn you have to learn
Yeah,
the craft.
right.
And then once you have reached a point where you're good, you can then start trying new things, but not before you have learned how to do the craft really well. And and I think there is like a lot of helpful elements here that we can approach, your design or creative career or just any career, because at the end of the day, anything that we do is a craft.
Yeah,
It's a series of steps that we repeat enough until we can do it, ourselves without guidance and without, anyone watching over us. When we can reach autonomy.
right.
And I think if we approach things in that way, I think we can have like a more like a roadmap. You can map a road navigation to
Yeah,
through to your next chapter, or to approaching your career. And I love that some brands have apprenticeships versus internships, because internships are for
yeah.
3 months, and I feel like in 3 months
A little
is
short.
it's a little short, because that's when you're getting warmed up. By the third month, you're like,
Right,
okay, I'm
right.
warmed up, and then like thing ends. So with the apprenticeships, which are I know New Balance and Reebok do
Yeah,
apprenticeships for 1 year.
yeah. Especially
So
when you're doing
like
industrial design work, right? Like there's a lot more. There, there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of like sending things out to get made and then coming back and let's do an analysis of it. Like let's test things out. Like the process is so much longer. That 3 months just seemed to be too short. I love
right,
that you touched on the difference of the apprentice versus the internship, because I think that being able to, it's just invaluable. Like there's just so much to learn from shadowing one like master. It's a system that's worked for hundreds of years. Like if you look back to the Renaissance, you know, people like Leonardo da Vinci or Michelangelo, like all Raphael, they all had these groups once they started their own studio of artists working under them that were dedicated to drawing like Michelangelo, like Raphael. I think Raphael was more about, he was more into that. Uh, there's a story that someone came to visit his studio from, uh, I think it was Dürer, came from Germany to visit his studio in Italy. And Dürer comes over to someone working in the studio that's drawing, and he Dura looks over at Raphael and is just like, wow, this is such an amazing drawing. And he's like, you want it? And he was like, well, like confused. And he gave him the drawing, because the drawing that the student was making, or the apprentice, he was drawing like he's been training to draw like Raphael. Like it's a Raphael drawing, whether his hand did it or this apprentice did it. And so that was one of the stories that I've picked up over the last few years, that I think is really interesting when it comes to like style and how much you can learn. But the thing that I wanted to get to is that internships, I've had my experience with them, but I think the apprenticeship is if you can land one of those, I think that's just nothing hit like an apprenticeship, I think. And so I wanted to ask you, Cesar, what are some things that you picked up from working with one master as opposed to working with a team, let's say?
I think it was a very interesting, approach to learn and to work. And for me, it worked really well because I was learning a craft that later on would be instrumental for a team. So I think there is value in learning, of course, how to work with teams, but also how to work by yourself, where you might not have the support of a team. And so you have to take care of every step of the process yourself. So for me, that was very insightful because I was able to learn every step of the process to create, to design, pattern make, and sample make a fully functional product at the end of the process, just myself. And I think that it is important for everyone to learn that, because it gives you insight into what it takes in every step of the process. And if there is ever an issue, you already have the knowledge to help you troubleshoot and be more accurate at solving problems. And it also gives you the tools and the technical knowledge to be able to articulate your ideas in a way that, okay, I can translate my idea into a manufacturable form so that people can copy paste what I've done and, make it in volume. And I think about that approach a lot and how important it is to be resourceful when you're learning and you're working with limited resources. And it just trains other sides of you that you wouldn't necessarily work as if you were working with a team. So I think it's important to work individually. In the case of the apprenticeship, learning from one person, and then you work with that person, you follow that person. And then, of course, there is value working with a team. Yeah. So I think there is value in both. And I think when you work with a team, it's more of like, there are other skill sets that come into play that you have to work on. And I think there is more like managing skill sets, conversations, or like, it takes more leadership to work in a team versus on your own. And then there is other elements that come into play, but I would say that it is valuable for designers to be able to do both.
Yeah, I think the level of there's like different types of there's a different skill set that's required for working directly with a senior level, maybe like designer, like master, versus like an entire team of different roles of like different people, because you have to adapt how you communicate to these different individuals in a team. You have to be able to articulate your design decisions, catering to their priorities, and in order to have good communication and like educating certain people about the process and why you've made certain design decisions, versus like working directly with just one designer. those design decisions, there's like maybe shorthand for it, or there's things that are already understood because they know the process and so on. But I I think yeah, that's a really important thing to know the differences between working with an individual versus working with independently working versus working with a team. And if you're able to do all of those, I think you're setting yourself up for success. One thing I wanted to ask you, Cesar, is imagine, someone who's listening right now, they've just graduated and they are facing this scenario where they've gotten a good education, they've got a decent portfolio, but they are graduating without next steps. Like they don't know if, like they don't have a job yet. They don't have an internship yet. And so my question for you is, what's some actionable things that we could advise, that we could sort of share for these individuals who are like these people who are listening and who are like, what should I do?
Totally. I think that you can start with looking to your school's career resources, like alumni and success resources. If they offer those kind of services, I hope they do. If they do, I would check in with your career advisor and stay on the radar for any opportunities that come to them that they can refer you to, because they know a lot of people in the industry and they know of a lot of opportunities happening. So I would check in with your career advisor to help you, have that outlet of like, okay, if something comes up, please let me know. Here's my portfolio, here's my resume, and make sure that you, let's say, check in all the boxes. So have a resume ready to go, portfolio, and a online site with your work where people can see your work, and have your LinkedIn up to date and stay active on LinkedIn, be engaged on LinkedIn. So I think once you have those 4 things and you feel good about it, you feel like you're in a good place, I think you can start, reaching out to people and give people a reason to want to hire you or work with you, and also always be open to either full-time or freelance. I think it's important to be flexible and to give the choice of both, because I feel like freelance is an easier way into full-time if that's what you want, or if you want to remain freelance, that's fine. But freelance is like a low commitment from the brand or from the client side to work with you, but it is a way, but you gain a lot as a designer and professional, because you're getting to show your skill and how valuable you are, and you're getting compensated for it. And if for some reason, nothing wrong with you, but if you only work one project with the client, that's fine, but you at least got experience and you got paid for it. And so that's something to consider. Be open to full-time or freelance, checking with your career advisor. And then also I would, checking with your professors. Your professors are also, part of an industry, and they have a network as well that they can maybe refer you to a colleague of theirs that could have something for you to help you. So professors are very, very helpful, and make sure that you check in with them, and they want, professors want you to be successful because they they want all their work that they have put on you, that they have shared with you, to be successful. Because if you are successful, that means that what they have done and taught you is successful. So a lot of people have the best interest in seeing you succeed, and so take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And then also keep in touch with your classmates.
Yeah.
And always be in touch, because they might not be able to help you now just because they are not in a position to, but later they might be instrumental for projects, or for work, and ways to, maybe later on, maybe not now, but later on, you end up working with a classmate.
Yeah.
And so that's very important, just to keep in touch. And I think that's, at least for me, those were the things, like my first, how can I say, like my first decisions, like, okay, let me check in with my career advisor, let me check in with my professor when I was a recent grad, to, you check all those, like, low hanging fruits,
Yeah.
or and you could start there, and if nothing happens, then you start, like, okay, this didn't work, or like nothing is happening now, so then you start, like, resourcing to other options, or measurements, to to help you, help you with your career.
Yeah. That's really good. A list I have here. So tap into your network, your career advisor, go and speak to your professors, and keep in touch with your classmates, as like, keep aware of where they are, and cultivate those relationships. One thing that I wanted to touch on is, like, this piece of advice that I received when I was, I think, a junior in college. I was living in Savannah at the time, and I was renting from this very successful business investor guy, who is just this like really incredible guy, who was renting this beautiful place that I was staying at. And I remember thinking, well, this is the most successful person that I know. I'm going to shoot my shot and ask if he would, give me some career advice. And I invited him for coffee. And we had a really good conversation, very short conversation, that made a huge impact on my life. And I want to share one of the things that he told me, because during this time, I was working with my career advisor, and they were doing everything that they could and giving me advice and all that. But for the last few summers, I was unable to get an internship, and I was just a little bit frustrated, because I was doing everything that I knew and that I could do, etc., and nothing was kind of happening. And so I meet with this guy, and this gentleman, he was maybe in his 60s or 70s. This guy was, very, very wise. And he said to me, he said, "What is it that you do?" And I tell him, this is what I'm studying. This is what I can do. And he said, "Well, then why don't you let people know that you exist?" And I thought, what? Like, what do you mean? And he's like, "You find out who you want to work with, send them an email saying, hey, this is my work. I exist. I admire your stuff, and I hope that one day we can work together. And I thought, okay. I walked from, we finished our conversation. He shared a lot more than that, but that was the one thing that I really took away that I could act on. And so a few weeks later, there was a exhibition, or there was a talk, a lecture, for Bang& Olufsen, I believe, at SCAD in the Gulfstream building. And I remember I was working at the time with the DigiLab, which is the 3D printing studio there that creates things for, prints and all that. And I listened to this lecture that our professor at the time, the chair, Owen Foster, he kind of motioned me, and he's like, you got to come and listen to this. And so I asked the guy I was working with, I was like, hey, can I go check out this lecture? And he was cool about it. So I went to check out the lecture, which, long story short, I learned about Bang & Olufsen design, and I reach out to the designer for the headphones at Bang & Olufsen, and there was no internship or anything like that. I just reached out, took the advice, put it into action. I let this guy know that I existed and that I really, I was good at this stuff, and I want to work with you. And it worked. But 2 months went by before I heard back. So there was a delay where I kind of put things out there, and there was no guarantee. And it turned, like, that risk turned out to be very rewarding, because I heard back and had this, not internship, it was more like an apprenticeship, where I was shadowing him, and I was there for 8 months, a little over, yeah. And what I learned is just like blew my mind. But the point of this whole story is, you want to let people know that you exist. You want to let people know what you can do for them, and make it as succinct as possible, and just do it. Just like share your work, share your existence with these people, because at the end of the day, every design team that is busy has work, and they're always looking for people, whether they can hire them or not. They're always like considering the question, should we add people to the team, or who can do this that's like going to save us money, and whatever business things are going on. The point is that I think for people who are graduating, for people who are still in school and looking for opportunities, sometimes those opportunities are not coming up on LinkedIn. Sometimes those opportunities are not listed on website. There is a possibility that you can create a new opportunity for yourself by simply reaching out. So, Cesar, I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Wow, that's very, very good. Because when you mentioned the part of like letting people know that you exist, and that you're like, hey, also like sharing your intention about like, I want to work with you, I want to offer, what I know, my expertise, I want to offer that. It just reminds me of the time when eBay reached out to me for my first partnership in my career. One of the project leads at eBay sent me a message on LinkedIn saying, hey, I love your work. We are working on some projects, or like I forgot like exactly what she said, but she pretty much said, hey, I love your work. It would be really cool if we could partner or work together in something. And I said, sure, let's talk. And then we um we took the conversation to emails, but it was similar where there were like quiet times, like a couple months or a month where I would not hear back. And it was about like 4 to 6 months from that first message to like when we actually started like, okay, talking and defining a plan for the partnership. But it was very similar, and I love that. And I look up to those moments in my career where, because now I'm on the other side, I'm on her side now, reaching out to brands or people that I want to work with, telling them, the same thing. Hey, I love your work. I love what you've been doing. I hope we can partnership or work on something together.
Yeah.
Here's my portfolio, or let's chat, let's discuss further and see where things could go. But at least people know of you and what you can offer. And
Yeah.
and you show people, how you do things, like why you are special. But I think that's the first step, reaching out, letting people know that you exist.
Yeah.
And also, like, being patient. Like, good things take time. And in a similar way, what happened to me easy, the way I got that job, it was April 2018. That's when I received the call from EA. And then, but nothing happened after July, when I got there were a couple meetings in between that time, but, nothing happened. And on July 17th, that's when I got the offer letter. But it was 4 months of quietness. And, you might think like, oh, nothing is happening, but it just took that long. And I think it's important for designers, or like just for anyone, to build up that patient muscle, and
Yeah.
to not rush.
Yeah.
Because you also don't want to rush into, think about this. You don't want to rush into a bad environment, a bad project, or maybe like teammates that, I don't know, the people that are not in the right place with the right mindset. So like, you don't want to rush into those scenarios. So like, when the time is right, when what will be, and those things will happen. But it is important, yes, just to send that message out there that like, hey, you exist. This is what I can offer. And this is why one of the reasons that even though you don't have experience, you have an opinion. And when you have an opinion, people want to hear that. People want to hear your perspective. And of course, you do it in an engaging, appealing way. And you could start your own blog in college, where you offer your fresh perspective on things happening, on products. And that's what I did in college. I had this blog that I started, where I was doing like design book reviews, and I was doing some interviews and small things like that. But it gave me the visibility that you need, especially when you're starting out, and you stay on people's radar. And maybe what you say, what you express on your blogs resonates with someone, and you start forming like this like emotional relationship, or like, hey, I really like what you say, how you think. Because people might not like what you do, or maybe the result is not something they don't want, but they like how you think. And And sometimes, that's valuable as well, how you think, and the importance of expressing how you think and explaining how you think and why you think that is very important. Because, and that's important because that's what you're going to be doing in a professional environment. You're going to be pitching projects to other companies where you have to be able to articulate why that product or why that idea is the best choice or is good for you. And so in bottom line, like, people are just looking for good communicators, people that are able to articulate, and that's an important skill that you can work out throughout blogging or just writing small articles about something that is of interest. And it just helps you, as a creative in your career. And it also starts positioning you in a position of not authority, but of knowledge, of expertise. And that's how I see, like, nowadays, like, the content creator community, or people that we look up to. Like, you start thinking about it, and you say, all they're sharing is their opinion. All they're doing is sharing their point of view.
Yeah.
And people tune in, listen, comment, engage. And these content creators become influencers. And
Right.
so,
They build
like,
a distribution.
there is a lot of good that comes out of it. So that's something that I would definitely look into trying as a recent grad or young professional. And that way you can also stay on another way, also to use that to your advantage. Let's say you want to work for X company, and X company offers this product, and you're a blogger, and you say, hey, I just reviewed your product, or, like, I really like your product, I just review it, let me know what you think. Someone from the company, and then someone from the company could be like, hey, I really like what you said, I really like your suggestions of how making it better, why don't you come work with us? Or, like, come work as a consultant. And instead of you coming in for an entry-level job, now you're a consultant, now you're an advisor. So, like, is the mindset how you handle this transition in your career. Are you gonna come, is your mindset at an entry level, or is your mindset to be at an influential level?
Yeah, that it really just reminds me so much of this talk that Steve Jobs gave, and there's this, like, whoa, I just made some video effects happen here. For people who are not watching the video, I just moved my hands, and I think the software that we're using created a fireworks blast on the screen. So that caught me by surprise. And let me get back on my train of thought here. The thought of reality being something that is a malleable substance, that there are certain things that there's a process to things. Yes, opportunities are listed on job boards, websites, etc. But what it comes down to is fostering and creating relationships, and you can create new opportunities and new roles and collaborations by simply reaching out. And that's one of the things that keeps coming back in this conversation. It's that there are so many things, so many opportunities that can happen with a handshake or an exchange. And it's really up to us to go out there and make it happen and have your website, your portfolio, have your documents, have everything that you need ready to go for when the opportunity comes through. Cesar, that idea of being patient, gosh, that resonates so much because you were just talking about how there was a 4-month delay between, talking on the phone with Ye and then actually working or getting the job offer. For me, it was 2 months. And in between that time, you're kind of going like, is this thing going to happen? When is it going to happen? I just want it now, etc. And there is something that we need to remember, and it's that in business, certain things like getting hired or jobs happening, like there are protocols in place that take time, business protocols. Sometimes people are not able to respond in a timely fashion because they have 1,000 other things that they have to do, and responding to your email is very, it's not a bad thing. It's not high on the priority list at that moment. And so instead of waiting on things to happen, I think that exercising patience is also an exercise in being, how do you say, patient with yourself and with the process, and trusting that process and doing things in the meantime that will help you move forward. That could be, maintaining your portfolio, fostering your creativity. Like Cesar, what you were saying about sharing either through a blog or through post your opinion. If you don't have experience, you might not have experience, but you do have an opinion. I love that quote because it empowers people who are just starting out, that the way you think, the way you execute, the way you observe, your point of view of your worldview is so important, because that's what shapes your output. And nurturing that and sharing that, being openly curious, being openly generous with what you know or what you're trying to find out on the internet is just such a valuable investment. If you think about every episode, every blog post, every piece of knowledge that you share online, or you're being curious about something and you're sharing that experience that you're having, it's like you're making a deposit in this bank of opportunity. And when you're sleeping or when you're doing something that's off your phone, your blog is being read by people who are interested in potentially working with you, or it helping someone connect dots that they had unconnected before they read your post. So I think there's so much opportunity in this conversation for recent grads to get their materials together, maintain their network, and broadcast their curiosity and experience to the relevant audience. When I'm reaching out in a cold email, or it's a cold reach out, and I want tips from you, Cesar, how would you advise me on writing that outreach email or DM?
Definitely short or concise. Then and also explaining the reason why you're reaching out. And then at the end, you can end up with like, here is my work, like a way for people to see more if they want to see more, but not necessarily putting that on the first message because it could be a lot. So you send a short note where you say, hey, I have been following your brand, your products. I can, I value good execution, good design. I want to explore ways to work with you. Here is my work, or like here's my experience. If this sparks any interest, I would love to discuss further. Thank you, Cesar. And that's a way to let people know that you exist, to let people know why you're reaching out to them, and to let people know of what you can do by showing your work that you've done before. And that that could be all it takes to get the conversation started.
Yeah.
And be open just to having conversations.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if a lot of people are saying like, oh, I would like us to commit for now, for us to like, to work together. Maybe that's not the right approach, but just be like, hey, let's just have a conversation. Let's introduce each other.
Yeah.
And, see where things could go. But, and I think at the end of the day, it's about relationships. And like, hey, let's have a professional relationship. And if it turns into something good, if it doesn't, that's fine. Like,
yeah.
Not everything has to be a business transaction.
Yeah. I agree with that.
And I'm also gonna say that the importance of you, broadcasting your opinion and what you think about design, or like things happening in design. That could also be a way for you to create, especially now, for you to create your own job or position. Because what if someone is interested in, sponsoring your channel or whatever it is that you do?
Yeah.
Or companies that pay you to review products. That's another, source of income. And then you start touching on content creation, content strategy, because a lot of like content creators or like influencers are also, I think their side hustle is marketing strategy, how to sell a product, what to say when you're showing a new product, things like that, how to present it. So there you're starting to get into like this other side of the business. And now it's so easy to create content. You have like YouTube Reels, you have Instagram Reels, and you have just so many media outlets to help you amplify your voice. And we're also a living proof of that. That's why we're doing the Moodboard podcast, because we want to share knowledge. We want to share the application to this knowledge. And we also want, we're open to the scenario and the conversations of like, partnership with someone and working with someone on, on different levels, whether it's, through the podcast, or like, sharing what so-and-so is doing and how they're doing it and why it's good for you. I think there is also value in us, just being advisors or working at a consulting level, about services or products and how to do better. And also we are in tune and in touch with the community. So that's, a way for us to also explore, career or, opportunities.
Yeah.
So yeah. we want to make sure that we articulate, all the things that we could do and we can do, and yeah.
I'm thinking about the process of seeking inspiration in, I think one of the biggest realizations in the creative journey for me was starting off thinking of the design process, or what I thought of the design process, as something magical and mysterious and sort of prone to an artistic temperament of revelation, if you will, of, what you see in the films where, it's some lone genius or a group of people just kind of thinking, and then eureka, they have an idea and there it is. Being struck by the concept of inspiration in that way. And one of the books that really helped shape my perception of the creative process was The Art of Thought by Graham Wallace, which was recommended to me through another book, which I love when that happens. And the where I'm going with this is, when you are not sure of what you want to do or where you want to go, or you're just not sure of anything, what do? You research and you look for things that you're gravitating towards for inspiration. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Cesar. When we are starting off and the creative process is something that we've sort of already practiced in school and we're getting familiarized with, how do we seek inspiration and cultivate inspiration and not be sort of passive about it? How can we actively be seeking inspiration?
It's interesting you brought that up, because I was thinking about that yesterday. Since we are, transitioning to new beginnings,
Yeah.
new chapters in your career and all of that, and inspiration is part of that, like, spark, the trigger that starts everything. I was thinking about, okay, you might not feel inspired, but it's because you're probably not in an inspiring place. So it is important for you to go to places where the inspiration lives, such as,
like, physically or mentally?
Physically.
Ooh,
like,
okay.
You have to go physically. Yeah, because I don't think you feel inspired at home. You might, but if you live in an apartment or like in a dorm or in a room, it's not the most inspiring place. It is comfortable, but it's not inspiring. So you go to a museum, go to an art museum, go to a lecture,
Yes.
go to watch a movie. You can also go to a library. You can go, let's say, interesting people do interesting things. And let's say you like drawing, and so you look for a group of people that like drawing sessions or something like that. Like, you get together with like-minded people.
Community. Find community.
Right, a community. Look for a community. Let's say you like, I don't know, finger painting. You look for a community that does finger painting. And I'm sure people that are in those communities that are doing what you like, they have lives, or like they have other things going on, and you could find something there from someone, or to do something else with someone that can help you, like, strike a conversation, and then that conversation led to like finding a solution or triggering a new thought that helps you articulate what you have been feeling, but you cannot like put in words or thoughts what it is.
Yeah.
So it's important for you to put yourself physically in these spaces and be surrounded with this kind of people so that you can have conversations to help you, to help you, how can I say, not troubleshoot, but just to help you organize your thoughts.
Man, that's so good. Yeah.
And so, yeah, it is important for you to physically put yourself in inspiring places so that you can create inspiring things.
I think it was a few months ago, I was browsing or I was on the Twitter app and scrolling by, and I saw someone post about an event that was happening here in the city. And I remember just like thinking, I want to attend this and see what happened. And I signed up for it. And I was on the wait list. And long story short, when I get there, I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised at how much activity and curiosity and innovation is happening in the design community here in New York City, and watching people share their experiments. Oh man, it was just like getting 2 turbo boosters to the brain, and just like it was just like takeoff in terms of like just being inspired by the energy and the quality of thinking. And so just exposing yourself to those lectures, like I mean, it made a very significant impact in my life. And it also just created new relationships for me that I'm really excited about, new friendships. And yeah, I mean, I can't stress enough that idea, Cesar, that put yourself in those communities.
Totally. And think about this too. You take notes. Let's say you go to a lecture, take notes.
Exactly. Yes. 100%.
Fast forward 5 years later, look at those notes now.
Yeah.
Because you're gonna look at it with a different lens now. Because you know more now, you've experienced more now, but then you look at those, notes that you took, those thoughts that you had.
Yes.
Could trigger new thoughts, new conversations, or just could trigger new feelings. But you had to take notes. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I've lost this habit of note taking by hand, because I've gotten used to taking notes on my iPhone. But it's not the same, because I cannot quickly draw a thumbnail or like a little infographic or just like a little visual element that can help me articulate my thought. And you can achieve that on your phone, or at least at the way or at the degree that you can do it by hand. And I just actually received a notebook as a gift, and I'm so glad I have now, a piece of paper to write stuff down, and to write my thoughts down, and to just have a trail of thought that I can look at, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and that it could help me. Like, if I'm, I don't know, if I'm like in a design dilemma or just anything, I'm just like, oh, just let me look through my old notes. It will trigger new feelings.
You highlight the most important piece of advice that I think you can get when you're attending a lecture or when you're attending you're under a new experience or whatever it may be. The activity of receiving that information and processing it through your pen is one of the best ways, I think, to listen actively to a lecture. And I'll give you a scenario that when I went to this event recently, that I was just sharing about, I was taking notes. And through those notes, I was able to create relationships with people because they saw me and they wanted to get access to these notes. And you never know when your curiosity is going to resonate with someone else and create a new connection that you didn't have before. And I'm reminded of the Walter Isaacson biography on Leonardo da Vinci. And in the beginning of that book, he talks about the just numerous quantities of the quantity of pages that detail and survived time, that detail the Leonardo da Vinci's curiosity and his thinking. It's so vast. It's like 7,000 different pages or book. I don't remember. I think it's pages or sketchbooks. I'm not sure. But the idea that struck me that mirrors what you just said, Cesar, about the phone not feeling the same as like having a sketchbook or a notebook, is that a tweet or a note inside your notes app may not be readable in 200 years. A similar way to how it's very difficult to, read a floppy disk because you have to have an adapter or whatever. Maybe that's not a great example, but you see where I'm going. That it's going to be that even though 500 years have passed, 500 plus years have passed, we can still look at Leonardo's sketchbooks because they're written on a timeless medium. Umberto Eco talks about the difference between silicon memory and I think it's vegetal. I can't pronounce the word, but basically organic memory, which is the piece of paper. And the benefit of having something that is an artifact of your growth and of your thinking and of your process, no matter how great the iPads get, and no matter how great our phones and our chips get, I really do believe that the notebook, the piece of paper, it's something tangible. It's something that you can refer to in the future with new lenses. And I mean, I can't stress enough how important it is to keep one. And yeah, share your thoughts, share your note, to the degree that you're comfortable doing so. But I love that you highlight that, Cesar, because notes they're ways of us reprocessing or digesting information. And sometimes it's easier to memorize an idea or a concept or a process or a system or whatever you are trying to articulate in an image versus just text.
Yes. And I think let's do a closing thought, or like a closing a conclusion here. What book or books? Because I don't think there is like one book type of answer, but what books would you recommend to a recent grad?
Wow, that's a good one. There are a couple. One of them would be Design Your Life by, I think it's Bill Burnett. You can just find it online. It's Design Your Life. And we've talked about this book before in previous episodes. But the reason I would recommend this is, one, it is the perfect book to give a recent grad, or purchase as a recent grad or someone in school still, because it helps you package all the knowledge that you received in design school and now apply it to your life, which will affect the trajectory of your personal life and your work life. And if they're, as we believe in them, so intertwined together as a creative person, they affect each other. So this book does a really great job of speaking to designers or non-designers in how to bring the benefits of design thinking into your life. So that's one book. The other book, I have this book back here. It's called Form and Function by Paul Jacques Grillo. But I need to share a few quotes with Cesar before we leave, because the book it starts with a message to the young designer, and it's fairly long. I won't read all of it, but I do want to read kind of my highlights here. First off, do not be afraid either of your ideas, no matter how wild, or of the ideas of others, no matter how disturbing. Fear is the motive power of all intolerance, while no truly intolerant man can ever be afraid. And the artist must uncompromisingly be tolerant. And then he advises to live dangerously, to avoid brainwashing of any kind, to don't work for success, whether success to you means a degree, a position, money, or honors. You cannot reverse the process of nature. Since no fruit in spring can produce flowers in the fall, you cannot visualize the harvest before the seed matures into a healthy, fully grown plant. And he goes on with just like, burn your idols once in a while, flout the rules as often as you can in a masterly way, acquire a masterly knowledge of your craft, and art is the highest form of aesthetics. The greatest artists, Beethoven, Picasso, are among the most hardworking, quote unquote, manual laborers. So this book is another one that I would recommend. How about you?
Wow, that was really good.
Right? Like, it's such a good book.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, would be actually like books about, building relationships and communication, just because I think relationships are such a fundamental key for you to accomplish almost, everything that you want in life, because you're always like dealing with people. You're dealing with relationships. You're dealing with like human behavior.
Yeah.
And it's important for you as a person to understand that it's trying to sell your work, sell your ideas to someone else. Important for you to know how that dynamic works and to be sensitive about it. So my first book recommendation would be How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's my first one, because there were actually a lot of career related topics slash advice. There is actually one chapter that talks about, this person that moved to a new city and, wanted to find a job. And this person, the chapter in the book explains how this person was able to like restart their career in a new place, in a new environment. So they explain what the person did to get there, which I'm sure it relates to the influence people part of the book. But yeah, that's one. How to win friends and influence people.
Dale Carnegie.
The second one would be Creative Confidence by the Kelly brothers. For me, the book was has been very significant, because to me, creativity is one of the only two jobs that are future proof. The other one being comedy. But being creative, if you're always creative, you're always going to be resourceful. You're always going to be needed. And Creative Confidence, it talks a lot about, Creative Confidence was also for me instrumental to be successful at Yeezy and to last, to be able to last for 5 years at Yeezy. Because I had, prior for me to work in a Yeezy, I read Creative Confidence, and I read a lot of books about creativity and innovation and what it takes to come up with, innovative ideas, innovative products, and understand the process that it takes to create that. And Creative Confidence was a very instrumental book for me to understand how creative minds work, and also to also understand and to also create work that can operate at like that level. So yeah, that would be for me another book to recommend: Creative Confidence, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I think the third one would be for me The Go-Giver. And The Go-Giver is from a series of books, but The Go-Giver is the the one that, the only one that I've read and the one that has stuck out the most. The Go-Giver is about creating value in relationships, and a lot of the scenarios in this book are like people that have started in with disadvantages, or people have started in places that are not at their favor, but they have been able to turn around those moments in life to favor, to success. So they have been able to bounce back. And they talk a lot about that, throughout the book of The Go-Giver. They talk about, someone looking for advice, and this guy, this, experienced, knowledgeable, I think he's like an old guy, giving him advice throughout the book. And they talk about, several, scenarios, several applications of where different mindsets are instrumental. And it was very good, because as professionals, we're trying to create value. We're trying to give value to our ideas. Like, hey, my idea is going to sell. My product is going to make your life better, and it's going to sell. And I think when we think about, us looking for jobs, we're trying to bring value to these places we want to work at. However, do people see the same value that we are seeing, that we think we can bring, or is there a disconnection there? And that's why we are not getting the job that we want, or we're not getting a response back. But The Go-Giver is a good book to read, because it'll give you a lot of tools and knowledge to help you navigate conversations. And those will be my three book recommendations.
Beautiful. I think that's really great. And for people who don't consider themselves readers, we still invite you to pick up these books and flip through them and, see what ideas stand out to you. Um, you can also get the audiobook and experience books in that way as well, because I do think that it's important to look to these long form mediums like books, podcasts, lectures, whatnot, and extract from them uh, the knowledge that will make a difference in the creative journey. So that was great one. I'm actually very excited to dig deeper into your time at Easy in a future episode, and maybe you could share more about creative confidence um, in its like your relationship with this book, because I know it's a very, very special book for you. And I have my copy here, and I'm still reading through it, and I think it definitely one of those. It's starting to become one of those books that's making me think differently about like our roles in society as designers, and really how that pertains, or like how that relates to being in an environment where creativity is the product. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And thank you so much for listening. And Cesar, thanks again for this great conversation. I'm pumped for the next one.
Thank you.